The reason why I wanted to share it was because a lot of people don't realise what people like me have gone through. Everybody says, oh, I had long COVID, it did nothing to me. Well, yeah, try living my life because it does a lot of damage to you. And then yesterday, especially at work, the younger ones that I work with have all had COVID, and we were talking about how when they get a cold now, how it affects them a lot differently. And one of them said to me, well, now I know how you felt when you got the flu earlier this year and you just couldn't shake it. I had it for like 3 months. It just wouldn't go away. So I asked my physio for a little bit of alternative, which has been the best thing for me, to be quite honest. I was tested positive on the 6th of October 2021, which is my husband's birthday. So he wasn't impressed. Was in hospital for 11 days on a respirator, and I got diagnosed with long COVID February 2022 because things just weren't quite coming right, and I was undergoing respiratory, physiotherapy, a whole lot of different things, and my lungs weren't coming right either. So it affected my lungs quite badly, to the point where I go in every 6 to 8 weeks to get them checked, just to make sure. So the worst symptom of all was fatigue. That hit me like a ton of bricks, because I was this really active person, and now I don't even do 3/4 of what I used to do before. Our whole lifestyle got turned upside down a little bit. We don't really go anywhere anymore. My preference is to just stay home where it's safe. And walking, the first time I tested it, walking was, I jumped on the treadmill, did 5 minutes and thought I was going to die, and didn't get back on it again for like 6 months. Slowly but surely I'm building up my energies. Excuse me. I had hot flusters, like I'm going through the change all over again. Anything to do with my breathing is a problem these days. So just getting a cold, sneezing, any sorts of things to do with my respiratory system is just not the greatest at all. So I need to be wary of that as well. I never ever used to get hay fever. I do now, like crazy. I always used to get diabetes checks because my father's family are all diabetics, and I get the quarterly checks done every 3 or 4 times a year. I ended up coming out of hospital with diabetes. It's controllable, which is lucky for me. So it was, and asthma. Never ever had asthma either, and the exact same effects. I have 4 different pumps, which really helped me a great deal, but it's trying to figure out which one to take which time of the day. So yeah. Other than that, every now and again I get like little shocks in my arm, but I have another condition that might be cause of that anyway, so it's really hard to tell which one is taking the effect. So, and weight, of course. So my diet's changed, lots and lots of things have had to change for the better. And they thought I had sleep apnea as well, but that was borderline, and I've managed to combat that one a little bit better. The biggest change is my eating habits. They've had to because of the diabetes side of things. How I exercise, if I exercise, how I do just normal housework. When they first told me that I had to only do 15-minute spurts, I thought they were joking until I tried it. and it takes me, what used to take me an hour to do my housework would probably take me 5 or 6 hours. You'll be surprised how quickly that you start burning up, and then you get really tired, and then you sit down, and before you realise it, you're having to re-energise yourself again all over. I eat a lot of ice blocks. It's kind of my go-to when I get really hot, because at first it was just drinking water, but it doesn't cool me down, where I found the ice blocks cool me down from the inside, which is a quicker way to get me. And we've finally installed our spa that we've had for like 2 years in a box, and I spent a lot of the summertime this year in that, pretty much just about all day, just trying to cool myself down, because you have like a little box of goodies where you think, okay, I'm going to try this today. Depending on the weather, there's different things you have to try, and I've tried them all. Acupuncture is my go-to right now, and I'm taking herbal teas, which has been really, really helpful for my breathing. And my Taiwanese physio is probably right now God to me, because he's helped me through a lot of things. Acupuncture especially. Like I have a session every Saturday, and I have needles right through my whole face. You name it, I've had a needle there. And then he gives me the special tea to drink, which it's probably the yuckiest thing I've ever had, but I've been taking it for probably six, maybe 8 weeks now, and it's actually helping me, and I drink it 3 times a day. So yeah, and he's pretty good. You know, he keeps an eye on me, checks up on me, asks me how I'm going. I am making a big improvement, according to him. He takes a photo of my tongue every time I go in for a session and shows me the difference of how it's progressing, and my energy levels have definitely picked up a heck of a lot. Although the housework thingy, there's still, depending on what I'm doing, so if I'm holding a vacuum cleaner, that takes more energy than anything. And I'm really lucky that I've got my husband. He does a lot of those sorts of things, and he can just pick up straight away if there's anything wrong with me. I was diagnosed with what they called CRIPS, which is complex regional pain syndrome, and it affects my right side, my right arm. It's like giving myself an electric shock, because I don't have a cartilage on the right side, and I had a plate in it for a couple of years, and when they removed the plate they damaged the nerve, so it's a nerve problem. It makes me have little twitches, things like that, but I have noticed since I had COVID, I get them more regular, and the symptoms are the same as carpal tunnel, a little bit worse. So, but I have a pretty high pain resistance. I'm kind of the what would the psychiatrist called it, the little box of gems, because the nickname for the CRIPS is the suicide condition, and I'm the total opposite to what they expected me to be. It's a funny one to explain. Sleep is terrible. According to my husband, I stop breathing in the middle of the night. So he has a tendency to give me a nudge to wake me back up again. And I actually pretty much sleep kind of sitting up. It's the best way for me to breathe. I do a lot of breathing exercises, just walking, breathing, all those sorts of things. I didn't realise that I was doing all of those. That's why they thought I had sleep apnea. And he came with me to a session one time, and while they were talking to me, he said, no. 3 or 4 times in the middle of the night, she stops breathing, and she doesn't even realise it. And I'm like, do I? And he goes, yeah, you do. You just completely stop breathing. And he's made me aware of it, and they've made me aware of how I can combat that. It's more about how I sleep, and sitting up pretty much is the best way to do it. But I get a lot of swelling as well, so but I think most of it is to do with the crypts, because if you see on my fingers I have different things, that's from the crypts itself. So I get cuts, swelling. It's just made it a little bit worse, but I can still cope with it anyway. For me, the hardest part was not being able to do what I used to do. Frustration set in after a little while, and my husband's been really good. He's like, yeah, you can't do that anymore, you have to do something else. And then I get really frustrated because I've been that active person. I'm used to being the one that is the first one there. I never used to go to bed before 11 o'clock at night. Most times now I'm in bed at 8:30 and fast asleep before 25 to 9. But I still get up early. I'm that 5 o'clock person. No matter what, that's me. Even when I was going to bed at 11 o'clock at night. Not being able to run around with my grandchildren like I was. Just different little things that I never really paid much attention to prior to getting COVID. And the worst thing of all was when I got it, it just started out as a little sneeze. I got the sneezes the night before. The next morning I couldn't even get out of bed. And, just trying to get somebody to come and have a look at me wasn't the greatest. And I got sick on the Monday. I tested positive on the Wednesday, I think it was. And Friday I got taken into the MIQ and then ended up straight into hospital. First time somebody could check me over physically. So that was pretty much a week or 5 days of doing nothing except talking on the phone and, give them the credit. They rang me every probably hour and a half to check that I was okay. But, very frustrating. My 78-year-old mother has a better social life than me. I know it sounds funny, but I've never been that outgoing person normally anyway. I'm the homey person, so and it's kind of changed my husband into that type of person as well. A little bit wary of where I go. Always very wary of the amount of people that are around. And if I always carry a mask no matter what, even if I know the people, but if there are too many, I am wary too. And there's been times where I've gone in somewhere and realised that I've gone around the crowd of people without even knowing. And my husband's like, why did you go around the long way? I'm like, did I? He goes, yeah, you just suddenly changed direction. So, just little things like that. You don't really notice it. I am wary of people washing their hands and touching anything that's mine. Yeah, it's kind of I don't know what it is exactly. My family, because we're very close, we're in contact every single day. My sisters live all over Australia, and there's only one that lives in Auckland, but every morning, it's good morning, how are you? And the first thing they say is, did you get a good night's sleep? Things like that. Because I'm the eldest of all my siblings, and I was that person that they all came to. So seeing me in hospital the way I was took a bit of a toll. My mother was like, this can't be happening. And my husband, he spent his time in MIQ, had no idea where I was for the first couple of days because no one bothered to tell him. Although I had my phone with me and I could message him, it wasn't I'm wary that if you say too much to him, he'll start to panic. So there wasn't a great deal I really wanted to tell him until the nurses started talking to him. But yeah, without my family, I think my husband would have just gone a bit crazy. But in saying that, they made me feel better that I knew that they were looking after him as well. And, we keep in contact all the time, and I always tell them about the different symptoms that I get. Luckily, they've all just been tested positive, asymptomatic more than anything else. None of them have got really sick. And for them seeing me being the sick one when I've never been sick was a little bit of an eye-opener. So, yeah. We tell all my friends, it's a story that I like to tell them and say, you need to look after yourselves, because this might be you one day, or your parents, or your grandparents. Do something about it. Don't be lazy and just forget about your shots. So I'm the person who goes, as soon as your shots are due, go get them done. Doesn't matter what it's for. Mammograms, anything that comes up, I'm in there straight away. So I'm really glad that I made an effort to get my COVID shots when I did. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. And that's what the doctors had told me. So, got a lot to be thankful for. My family, my kids. 2 of my children live in Australia. So that's 6 grandchildren over there, and then the other one lives here, and he's got 6 on his own. So I get to see them. Most of our time is just my husband and I. We don't really go anywhere. Our social life is just, there is no social life, but that's how we like it. He's also become a little bit wary about being around a lot of people as well, because of the effect that it had on me. He's wary who comes to the house. Because I was that, before I got COVID, I was that person who put signs everywhere, and got a code put on my front door and a big sign at the gate. It's COVID lockdown, people, go home. Don't even think about coming up my driveway. And they all laughed at me. Well, don't laugh at me. Had sanitisers everywhere, wipes everywhere. Don't knock on the door unless you've wiped your hands. And because we have security cameras, so I could see them. And if they didn't do it, I'd just open the door and say, sorry, get lost. And then when I got sick, they're like, oh my God, now we know why you did it. Yeah, one of you brought it to my house. But apparently they said I might have caught it through when I went to the supermarket. That was our only outing. Once a week. Bit frustrated. The worst part was when I went into MIQ and hearing people talking about it. Oh, this is a load of rubbish. I only tested positive. And because they sent me to MIQ with my husband after I was let out of the hospital, because I didn't want to go home on my own, and he still had a couple of days to go. And they cleared it all, and I was just sitting there listening to these people outside. I'm thinking, oh my God, you packer. And this lady just went on and on and on about it. I want to get out of here. And I just got up off the chair, went to the door, and just screamed at the top of my voice and said, you should be counting yourself lucky, lady. And because there were a couple of guys there in other units, and they knew that I'd been in the hospital because they'd been talking to my husband. And one of them said, yeah, don't argue with that lady, she's just come out of hospital. She knows exactly what it's like. And the lady ran away from Limit MIQ. I thought, people like you are the cause of why people like me go into hospital, because you just can't be bothered. And, there were kids in there. My 2 grandchildren were tested positive. I mean, they didn't get sick or anything, but still, and they were only 4. So, yeah, I get a little bit angry when I hear people talking like that. You wouldn't know what it was like, and if you did, you probably wouldn't even survive anyway. So sometimes I feel like saying something mean. then I think, no, you can't do that. You wouldn't wish it upon anybody. Not that bad anyway. Brought us closer together. I mean, we've been very close anyway. I have to admit, him, during that period of time, that's the longest time we've ever been apart. We do everything together. I think if you can get any closer, we have. We don't go anywhere without the other one. So if something happened to one of us tomorrow, I wouldn't like to think what would happen, to be quite honest. We are very protective of one another, who comes around our home, who we even, talk to, because he has PTSD, so there's lots of different things that have brought us together over the years, even closer, I suppose. And some of the things that he had to deal with for his PTSD are some things that I've picked up to use, like he has all the breathing things that he has to do as well. So it was easy for me to pick them up when they said, we've got to teach you how to breathe again. I thought that was hilarious. And they said, it's not funny, we're actually serious. And I'm like, but I'm breathing. Yes, no, but you're not breathing right. This is what we have to teach you all over again. It was the hardest thing ever to try and do it. You don't realise that you have to breathe in a certain way to get through. And and when I realised it, I said, I'm so sorry, I didn't realise, that's what you actually meant, that there is a certain way that you have to breathe to make you get through certain things. I just thought it was hilarious when he said it. It's like, but I am breathing. I get up every day. Until you start practising it, it's not easy to do either. Learning how to do things in a different way that you never really noticed before. It's quite funny. When it comes to the breathing side of things, you have to learn how to do, like there's a 4-1 or a 6-3 breathing out and then breathing in, and then you've got to do it in such a way that you have long breaths and short breaths. And them explaining it sounds easy, but to actually do it, it's not that easy. Once you do it enough times, it becomes second nature. But trying to figure out how to, the first time I tried to do it, she said, right, just lie there and we want you to breathe in twice and then breathe out long, long breaths and hold it for a certain amount of time. Not the easiest thing to do at all. And there's ways around you getting into a habit of doing it. And I was really lucky that Daryl, my husband, he had the same sort of exercises that he had to do when he first got diagnosed. And together, the two of us, we do it together to make it easier for me. But lying there trying to do something that you thought was just a matter of, and then breathing through your nose or your mouth, I find that very hard to do one or the other. But I think over time, once I got the hang of it and once you stopped thinking about it too much, it became a lot easier as well. In terms of the long COVID itself, it really depends on, I suppose, how bad you were when you got COVID, how you picked up on the things that had changed with you. I mean, for me, it was really easy because I went from every day of the week doing something, being out, sports, whatever. I went from that person to not even wanting to go out of the house. Walking around the house to do a simple task became the most annoying thing ever, because I'm like, oh my God, I'm only going to the bathroom or the kitchen or something like that, and my breathing was so rapid it wasn't funny, and then I have to sit down and you just get frustrated with yourself. I think it can't be that hard just to do this simple task, but it was. And until you admit to yourself that you need to do things in a different way, it becomes hard. Gets to the point where you just get so frustrated and you think, oh my God, I'm going to give up. I can't be bothered doing this or that. But I've learnt over time, as long as I remember that these are the things that I need to be aware of, then I like just going shopping. Once upon a time I could walk around all day. Now it's like, okay, we'll go to the next chair and I'll go and sit on there. Going to watch my grandchildren in their sport, running up and down the sideline like a typical grandparent. Can't even do that anymore. And yeah, just weird, funny little things that you took for granted, I suppose. And when you try and doing it now, it just becomes a lot more difficult and you have to think about it. Yeah, so... They have the breathing things issues, especially with the asthma thing. I mean, I never ever thought I'd be in that one of those places where I used to have to, will need a pump at any time, and I got to the point where I was using the pump so often it wasn't funny, and they just said to me, okay, you need to back off a little bit and try and, because for me I thought that was going to help me breathe better, and I think it just became a panic thing after a little while. And then once I went through the respiratory physio, and they explained to me, these are the reasons why we're giving you this, and you need to learn how to use them properly for your own benefit rather than trying to get it down your throat because you're having problems breathing. So it's more a backup than it is anything else. And the idea was for me to learn how to do all the exercises so it would benefit me, like how many times you breathe in, how many times you breathe out, what position you should be in when you're doing it, whether you're standing, sitting, and what types of things you're doing to bring in a different way of breathing. So if I was sitting down like I am now, technically I should be breathing through my nose. Or if I was standing up and I'm trying to walk at the same time, it's a matter of in one and out the other. Not the easiest thing to do, but I've become accustomed to it now that I know when I'm doing it. And then there's times where I forget, and that's when I struggle. Best way for me to keep track of what's working for me is my physio has asked me to write down like a daily tracker thing, because he needs to know himself, because I don't have the exact same acupuncture each time. The needles go into different places and he puts the needles in based on where I'm getting pain, what my breathing's like, what my tongue looks like in the picture, different things like that. Like this Saturday I had needles right through my face and through the top of my head, but the Saturday before that I only had them in a couple of places on my arm and in the top of my head, and my belly. So every time I go in, the picture of my tongue first, and then he asked me questions about how my breathing has been, what my sleep pattern's been like. So I have to note those sorts of things down so he's fully aware of where I'm at the time. And other things that when I'm at home, if I try something different, I'll write it down and go, oh yeah, that worked for a little bit. Yeah, it's a funny thing. I've got papers everywhere stuck on the fridge saying this is all right, I lasted this long on the treadmill, or I did okay walking up the road. But it's for my purpose. It gives me a gauge on how I'm progressing as well, which is a lot better than it was before. It's a funny one actually, because when I was talking there are different things that I'm doing that give me warnings that something's going to happen. The heat and the temperature is one of the main ones more than anything else. Like the interview, the Zoom meeting that we had last week, I could feel myself just heating up to the point where I was just about boiling over, and as it turned out, I ended up sleeping for like 3 hours. I just couldn't, I had no energy to do anything, and I hadn't done that for a long time. But I realised that is because I was sitting in the house and the HRV was going when I first sat down, and then it stopped halfway through because it was at the end of its cycle. So I had to get up and open the door behind me to try and get them to cool down a little bit more, and that didn't work either. So the more frustrated I got in getting to that point, the worse I got. And it took me a little while to figure out why it happened, and it was because I was getting frustrated and not fixing it straight away. Yeah, it's a funny thing. Some days ice block can fix it just like that because it cools me from the inside out. That's how I see it anyway. Other days, the more frustrated I get, the worse I get. And then all I do is I just have to go and sleep, otherwise I'm just not, I'm just a mess. So yeah. Other things, not really. It's more the heat that's the most affecting part of me, and it makes me really, really tired. It's kind of hard to explain what it actually does to you. Yeah, it's not an easy thing to explain, to be quite honest.